Alright, so welcome back. This piece of junk right here, throttle body injection, comes on some of your 90s models, GM. I know other companies had their own version of it, but this right here is untunable. Well, you can tune them, but they really don't do anything. You can put a bigger injector in them, but you're not gonna really get that much out of them, especially once you start adding a cam and anything. So it loses its mind, computer loses its mind. So I will show you how to swap that out. Try to make it as easy as I possibly can. So this wiring and everything is done for a 90 model Camaro RS. Originally 305 throttle body injection car, 700 R4. So the wiring might be a little bit different, but the setup is still around the same. So the main thing that you use is a large cap HEI. Your large cap HEI or coil in the cap HEI is probably the most simplest thing to use. This one does not have it anymore because it's on an MSD ignition, and I will have a video about that if you want to go farther in the build and do that to a hotter spark. But basically, the thing about it, this piece right here, which is inside of the cap, controls all your firing. So you no longer need the computer. Now, the grounds and everything, what you need, I have no clue. So be wary of that. I still have all my factory grounds on this engine hooked up because I did not cut the harness, because I did not know if the customer would want to go back and put a 305 back in this car. So everything is kind of just wrapped up neatly and tucked back down almost over the transmission. Its own little harness setup. So large cap HEI is the first thing you'll need. Second thing you need is the intake manifold and carburetor. I mean, pretty simple, right? Third thing you need will be a fuel pressure regulator. Your fuel pressure regulator is going to be the main thing you need, because this is what's going to make your carburetor work flawlessly and to let you drive around perfectly. So there's two different types of fuel pressure regulators you can buy. There's a deadhead or a returnless style, and then there is a return style. Main difference in between those two is this right here is returnless. This line that comes out the bottom is what makes it return. It returns back to the tank. A returnless style is going to be knocked off here. There will be nothing here. You cannot turn a return style into a returnless style. It will just not work. If you do get a return style, normally they're adjustable, so you can adjust the fuel pressure on it. Most deadheads are going to be just a base pressure, so that'll be anywhere from 7 to I think 10 psi. Not sure. Most time I just tell people get an 8 psi one and you'll be dead on for a street car. If you are planning on doing anything like this where you want to boost or nitrous or anything like that, I prefer you to get a return style. That way you can return the fuel back to your tank and keep some cavitating. So the second thing, which is the next most important thing, and this bypasses the computer, it's this large cap HEI. The only thing that you need to make this distributor work is a 12-volt source power wire or your ignition wire and a ground. That's all it takes to make this distributor work. Takes nothing else, has nothing special. On this car itself, here's the factory cut harness that I took. Dropped it. So this is the factory harness that went to the coil that was sitting on back of the intake manifold. Has two wires. This one is a white and a red. I've seen them white and green. I've seen them white and purple before, depending on your model car and what it is. But the way to tell which one is your ignition wire is, you turn your switch on, either hook a jump box or a battery to it to make sure you have power going through. Then these two prongs that are in here, one of these is going to read 12 volts or whatever your battery is reading, or whatever your jump box is hooked up to the cables is reading. The other one's going to be giving you decimal points like 0.36 or 0.37, something like that. Normally, it'll have a plug. Sometimes they don't. It just depends on model year, or if you're doing this for a car that is not a GM, like a Ford or a Dodge or something. But you need this 12 volt source. That 12 volt source goes straight to your distributor, and then your ground from your distributor, as I got it, just ran straight up there. Works perfectly fine as long as it's grounded. You know, my chassis strap goes to my battery too, so everything is grounded together. That is it on the ignition side. If you're going into something deeper, as in you want to build kind of a street strip car, or you're going to build a really high compression big block, and you know you want something that's going to make it a little easier to start, you can go to a MSD box, or as what this car has, a 6AL-2 MSD box, which is fully programmable, but it only pulls timing. There's another video on that I will be posting, so stay tuned for that. And the third thing you need is your intake manifold and carburetor. This seems like it's the simplest thing, but I've seen this go wrong so many times. So when you get your carburetor or intake, please make sure your carburetor and intake, please make sure your intake matches your cylinder heads. Don't get a rectangle port intake manifold and think they're gonna fit oval port, cylinder heads. It's basic, just like growing up putting a square peg in a square hole. You just gotta make sure they match. I tell people take the intake manifold off before you order you an intake manifold, because they do make different heads. It is not common to see too many different ones, but sometimes you do get into a weird one, especially if you have a set of aftermarket heads you want to throw on. Then you can kind of get into something a little odd. Other than that, that's your whole swap. The distributor takes place in your computer. Your carburetor takes place in your fuel injection. Your regulator controls all the pressure. That's the basic swap for a TBI. The one last thing for this TBI car, and this can be done a million ways. This is the way I did it for this car, because it is going to be mostly a street strip car. It's not going to really just be sitting in a parking lot with the radio on or whatever. So this car's fuel pump, it has a wall barrel Hellcat fuel pump. But this fuel pump is on constantly. Like when you turn the ignition switch on, the fuel pump comes on and it's constantly running. So your fuel pump wire, you might have to look at the schematic, but you should have two relays. One relay is going to have like all your windshield wiper stuff and everything, and then you're going to have another relay, same part number, but on this car itself, it was this gray wire. This gray wire sends power straight to the fuel pump. All of these three wires are to, when you turn your switch on, to prime it and make it run, and one of them was like a fail safe. So all you need is your power from your from your relay. You have, I know on the IROCs, on this car as I found, you have ignition sources in your fuse box under your dash. So you can hook it straight to 1 to 3 ignition IGN spots, and that will give you full power when you turn your switch on, and that's how it works. Do not hook it to the battery spade terminal or the BATT. Please do not hook it there. If you do hook this into the ignition spots, and this is speaking for a 90 Camaro RS, this body style Camaro, like a later one with a 305 in it. I do not know about TBIs, so this is just strictly for 305. You might have to do a little research on this for your own vehicle. So this is that disclaimer for it. If you do stick that fuel pump switch to your battery, it'll run forever. Will not cut off no matter the switch is on or off. If you put that wire and you put a spade connector on it and you run it to your ignition spot under your dash, one of the IGN spots with a spade terminal. It looks like where a fuse is supposed to be, but it's only got one leg. That's what I'm talking about. Now, if none of those ignition spots work, like say for instance you hook it up and you turn your switch on, you have no power going nowhere, you go and you stick a meter on it, you have zero power, check your radio fuse. Your radio fuse controls all of that. So that is what's gonna make that work. All right, hey buddy, but that's what's gonna make that ignition switch work. Other than that, that's how I run mine. You can hook it up to a switch, and if you do want to hook it up to a toggle switch so you can cut it on and off or set up your prime setup or anything like that, you can run it straight to your battery, but you got to have some way to cut it off. But as a carburetor swap, this is the basics. This right here works. It runs. I will post a video of it running. And this is how I got it set up.